call the meeting to order. We can stand and say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Visitors wishing to speak. We have one. Miss Debbie Miller. You're going to break a big streak here, so you have 3 minutes.
Okay, but don't start again.
I'm not the keeper, Deb.
Okay,
Custodian.
listen, Tony said I can take my mask off so people can hear me. Do I have permission? Okay.
You can come up. If you go over 3, though, I'm going to have to call in the SRO.
All right, well, don't start. Okay, all right, Tom. Okay, so first I want to thank Tony for signing on to the letter that Mike Cornell sent to the governor recently. Thank you so much. I personally feel it's all an overdue and I'm grateful for it. So I'm here tonight to talk to our superintendent and all of the board to implore with all of you to continue to keep the pressure on Governor Hochul to let the mask mandate expire. I'm well aware she's going to make an announcement tomorrow. Thank you. She's going to make an announcement tomorrow, but I didn't want to wait for it for 2 reasons. Well, for one reason really. I don't trust her, and I'm afraid she's not going to end the mask mandate or allow it, and I didn't want to have to wait for another next time for a board meeting. So that's why I wanted to come here. And basically, again, my overall message is to implore you, please keep the pressure on her. Please advocate for our kids. Enough is enough. And just, to make it clear, the reason I don't trust her, in case that sounded, not nice to anybody, it's because all along, all of her decisions have not been based on evidence or data or research or facts or everything right in front of her. And she's been ignoring the fact that, and everybody can see by now, everybody knows by now, the kids these age are not, adolescents and young children are not vulnerable to serious harm from COVID. And we all know terribly well the awful effects that masks have on kids physically and emotionally, psychologically. We all know this. I could go on forever about it. And as everybody here knows too, it's been proven that cloth and paper masks do not prevent the spread of COVID. And they don't help prevent somebody from getting sick. K95s are another issue. I think they're difficult to get, and I, for one, would never let my kid wear one for 8 hours. Another reason I don't trust her is, frankly, this picture. For any of those of you who cannot see it, this is Kathy Hochul in what looks like a kindergarten or a preschool, the little kids wearing a mask, the teachers wearing a mask, and look who's not wearing a mask. And I'm not here to point out her hypocrisy. I'm here to say, if she really believed that masks were of value, she'd be wearing one. The whole fact that she's not wearing one tells everything. And then the third reason I really kind of lack trust in her administration is because in the letter dated 1/24 that Tony sent to parents, but he was quoting the directives he was given by the Department of Education. They said the Department of Education said that they were aware of the decision in Nassau County to not do masks anymore. But they said that that the Department of Health was issuing an appeal, and therefore there was an automatic stay that would unambiguously restore the mask mandate. That's just not true. There's no such thing as an automatic stay. Legally, there is not. Now, I know they went to court and they got it the next day, and I acknowledge that. But the mere fact that they said there's an automatic stay, that's just not a true thing. And it almost sounds like they're desperate to keep kids in masks. Like, don't you let those kids out of masks. And that's really concerning to me. So the bottom line is, please advocate for our kids. And if she comes out tomorrow and says, okay, yeah, we can undo it, but you're going to have X percentage of kids vaccinated, that is not acceptable. And please do not accept that.
Written communication, I did share with the board. I received a letter asking for support for BOCES incumbent board member, Ms. Mary Buss, or Busse, I'm not sure how you pronounce her last name, but I did share that with everybody by email. So That was all the written communication I have. Reports of boards and committees. I will jump in first. We had a capital committee meeting that Dominic and I were part of. Just going over the last 2 weeks, actually, there's been 2 different ones. One going over Windermere, just talking about some needs at the facility, clarifying things, and the same with the middle school that we were part of. So I know they had reported that the building condition survey is underway, so a lot of that will be matched up with these different meetings that we've had at the building level to ultimately come up with some type of proposal at some point that the committee will review. So I'm also a proxy for Ms. Arrington for a report for her, so I will do that. On the Professional Learning Committee. So she reports that the Professional Learning Committee met via Zoom on January 19th. Dr. Shanahan presented the draft of the Professional Learning Plan for 2021 through 2024. We were asked to review and revise the plan in order for the board to consider for adoption at today's meeting. The plan is aligned with New York State professional development requirements. We will continue to meet towards the end of the school year to take a more in-depth look at the goals for the 2022 through 2023 school year. So that is her report. I know we have a technology committee report, Mrs. Ernst.
Yes, the technology committee met. It involved reps from all the stakeholders, including principals, teachers, staff, and we had a facilitator, Susan Cyrillic from BOCES. We reviewed the digital literacy and computer science standards, drafted goals for the technology plan. It was really a preliminary meeting where we went through everything and kind of figured out what direction we need to go in, looked at how our mission statements and our overarching district goals align with what we're reading from the technology perspective, and we have until August 2023 to complete the process, so we really just got started on that, and then the teachers were going back to their building teams to talk through what we had discussed already, and then we'll reconvene at a later date.
Great. I think I'm missing the Portman for
Yes.
a policy committee.
Thank you. The policy committee met on January 31st. We reviewed 4 policies that are here for approval tonight. The first 6220 was just a revision of the requirements for substitutes through this year. 8210 was revised with the adoption of Aaron's Law, as well as a removal of some duplicative verbiage throughout. 8240 was just a slight wording change, and 1510 was a revision to include changes from Public Officers Law Section 103, as well as some clarification to a few sections in the policy.
Great. Mr. Bugle, I know you had mentioned you had a report on attending Rick Tim's.
Yeah, I attended the Rick Tim's event on Thursday, the virtual event that was put on by the ACASB. The title was, I think it's important because these are the ones we talked about, long-range financial consideration, advocacy topics and strategies for school leaders. We went through a lot of different things. The presentations were usually pretty involved. Talked about all the acronym funding that we received from the feds, the CRISA, ARPA, ESSER, a couple of the other ones. To me, one of the main takeaways that I got from that was that the foundation aid that we're getting, the extra foundation aid dollars that we're getting this year and next year, as we started last year, are based on federal funding. And if federal funding goes only till next year. So his concerns are, where did this money come from after the fact? And that's why he talked about the long-range planning, considerations, and different things for us. Did you guys get the today. So it gets kind of involved. But I just think it's, as we're doing these budget development things, and that we may need to take a long-term focus on this. I mean, he's literally recommending looking at least 5 years when we're setting the strategies and setting the goals. I actually talked to him the next day. He gave a cell phone out to everybody and share it with you guys if you see something you want to talk to him. The presentation was actually recorded as well. It was a Zoom meeting. So there's some things that you guys want to look at. But I just think it's going to be important going forward for us. To me, when I heard that about the federal funding coinciding with the foundation aid, maybe pause a little bit. So, but I thought it's something that we have to know. The other thing is he had some advocacy items, and I just wonder if going forward, so the advocacy items I'll read it to you, whether or not this whole foundation formula is going to end up changing. And if it does change, we end up at the bottom of the end, unfortunately, for another year or so. So there's 4 different items. First is development of more equitable distribution of funds among school districts based on accurate representations of fiscal capacity and poverty, as well as demographics of the student population relative to our education mission. What he had said that New York State is still working on the 2000 census. Those are the numbers that they're using, like as you mentioned, which to me is a bit scary. Number 2 was the adequacy of funds within the formula based on the actual cost of education for each school district that allows it to achieve their educational mission under the obligations contained in the state laws and regulations. Number 3 is the development of a district phase-in plan over the next few years with improved foundation formula to accomplish equity and adequacy so that the state is significantly more predictable for each school district. These are some of the things I think that we talked about. Ms. Brzezinski mentioned. And the last one is the development of a sound financial plan to sustain state aid to school districts by the state. So these are now going to be, when we talk about advocacy, these are going to be the things I think that we're going to hear. I'm sure all the different policies PCHB type of organizations. I think this is a good message as well. So, I think some of the things that we talked about are things that we get in our budget stuff, and some of the things that we're talking about from both the superintendent and Ms. Brzezinski. So, I think we're doing okay. But just this is the I just thought this was really important.
Great. Does anyone else have any updates? Okay, we'll move right into the superintendent's report.
Thank you. It's not on the agenda, but I did want to take a minute just to update the board on some of the mask meetings that are taking place. So today, I forwarded you an email update that I got from the New York State Council of Superintendents. Today, the governor did meet with the New York State Council of School Superintendents, the School Administrators Association, also known as SANES, the School Boards Association, the New York State PTA, and representatives from the Big Five, which is the large city school districts, New York City, Buffalo, Rochester, Yonkers, and I think Syracuse. And the meeting was short, but just to calibrate our expectations, tomorrow she plans to make an announcement on the mask mandate statewide that is due to expire on February 10th for all public places in the state except schools. And then there is a separate mask mandate that exists that for schools that is supposed to expire February 21st. So the takeaway that I'm reading from that meeting was that she has agreed to provide an update as that deadline approaches, February 21st, on the future of the mask mandate for schools. NISCUS is one of the organizations that has advocated for an off-ramp for the mask mandate, but based on metrics that could guide the decision-making, because what we've seen across the state is that many communities and school districts are been pitted against each other over this topic. So they're asking her for some clear, metrics that would help guide that decision. And of course, over the weekend, I'm sure you all saw the reports that she chose to focus on vaccination rates of school-age children. So it was communicated in this meeting, which is provided to us in the summary, that she was cautioned by all of the groups that met not about using vaccination rate as a metric and the inappropriateness of that. So certainly we don't have any definitive answers from this, but the conversations are happening. That deadline of February 21st is approaching, and I expect that we'll have more information as we get closer to February 21st. The second thing I have for our superintendent's report is Mr. Wheaton is here to provide us with a physical education and health and curriculum update. We've had the opportunity to add some health curriculum in our elementary schools as well as in our middle school. All of you approved some positions that have helped us implement that, along with Jeff's leadership in providing a curriculum development and Dr. Otto. So he's here to provide an update on how that's going. In addition to some new exciting renovations we've seen in the health and physical education world as well.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me here tonight to give you an update on health and physical education, as well as some new opportunities on the horizon in the realm of interscholastic athletics. I do want to give a shout out to Lori Sisenko for her help with our social media presence in health, phys ed, and athletics. As you can see, we do have 3 options now. We have the Twitter option, as we've always had for a number of years. We now have Instagram at Amherst Tigers 1. We also have our YouTube channel. So we're continually trying to build our brand for health, physical education, and athletics, and get the word out there and honor the great things that our student athletes are doing on a day in and day out basis. So for today is primarily going to be an update to health and physical education, and as I alluded to, and as Mr. Piniella mentioned, there will be a slight update to athletics towards the end as well. So the agenda items for today, program changes and what was the rationale for changes in health education. I'll introduce you to our new health education faculty members. If you haven't met them throughout the building yet, I have some images and I can talk a little bit about them, their background, our new health education curriculum, and why we are doing what we're doing. Some physical education curriculum updates, facilities updates relative to wellness and physical education, and then I do have an update relative to girls flag football, which you've probably seen in the news by now, by the Buffalo News, that girls flag football is on the horizon, so I'd like to share that information with you. Okay, so some program changes to health education. This goes back 2 to 3 years at least. I started in 2019, and when I came in, my predecessor, Dr. Ilk, had already started this work with Dr. Otto on looking at health education, but also mental health education as well. So we're mandated by New York State to provide quality health education. We have health education standards K through 12, and there are mental health education standards as well that we need to focus on through not only health education, but our PPS staff as well. So we looked at a gap analysis. Where are we at with our current curriculum? Are we meeting those standards? And if not, where are the gaps? And what we found was that health education in general was being taught by general ed teachers, physical education teachers, guidance counselors. It was a plethora of people trying to do really the best that they could to meet the standards for health education. But we still found that we had a number of gaps. throw on top of that mental health mandates the work that we've been performing with the PPS staff, we just had a lot of imbalances in health education, especially at the elementary level. So what we did, so there's a little bit of the program change or the shift of mindset. We hired 2 health education teachers at Windermere and at Smallwood. They're actually .6 health, .4 physical education to round out for a full-time teacher at each one of the buildings. And those individuals are health certified, and they're teaching that health education curriculum in coordination with our PPS staff for some of those mental health mandates as well. And Dr. Otto's done a phenomenal job with her crew to correlate and to collaborate with our health ed teachers. In addition to that, we did hire a health teacher, a .8, at the middle school to bring back, which was once in the curriculum, to bring back 7th grade health. And that individual, their .2 is rounded out at physical education at the high school with some of our larger class sizes. So currently, as it stands right now in the 21-22 school year, we have health education K through 9, which is outstanding, phenomenal. I can't tell you any other district that's really doing it that way, and especially at a time right now where health education and making quality life decisions is extremely important. Social, emotional learning, mental health, coping skills, etc. I'll explain some of the curriculum that they're teaching on a day in, day out basis. So what are some of the benefits? Consistent health and mental health instruction in K-9. When I looked around Western New York, other districts that are doing this, the only one that came close was Kenton Schools. They insert a health education teacher and they travel from building to building, which is great. That's better than not having it, but we have an established teacher in each building focusing on wellness, health education, mental health, which is outstanding. My colleagues are jealous that we have that here in Amherst. It really is a pretty special thing, and thank you to you all for supporting that. Increased collaboration with our PPS staff, increased student academic achievement, social emotional health, quality of life, all of those things that we're focused on in health education. We now are meeting and exceeding New York State Department of Ed learning standards for health ed and mental health ed. And this is an MTSS Tier 1 intervention. So we're really, we're getting in at the ground level at Tier 1 for those kids and identifying issues that may need to be a referral to our PPS staff, really helping out at the ground level in the classroom setting. Okay, so who are our new faculty members? Maybe you've seen their names through the classroom setting or in the coaching realms. At Smallwood, we have Anthony Direnzo. This is just a little social media image that was put out at the beginning of the school year to introduce our new staff within our department. Anthony comes to us with about 5 years of experience at a K-8 charter school. He's doing a phenomenal job at Smallwood. The staff love him. The teachers love him. The kids, he's doing a great job inserting himself into the health ed classroom and phys ed. I believe I've got him on the hook for a little bit of coaching this spring as well to kind of continue to give back to the community, the Amherst Athletics Department as well. Maya Dills is our health and PE teacher at Windermere Boulevard School right here in this building. Again, she's doing a phenomenal job as well, really connecting with kids, focusing on all of our health education standards, our mental health education standards. I've heard great things, I've seen great things from Maya. She's currently coaching our modified girls basketball team, so again, giving back a little bit more, adding value to the district. And then Mike Portman is our middle school health and PE teacher. Mike came to us from Dunkirk Schools, was an Amherst kid growing up, so he's familiar with all of our facilities and the district here, and Mike is doing an outstanding job at the middle school, and Mike coached cross country for us this fall, so a lot of added value there out of our health and PE teachers. Okay, so some of the work that we did with our curriculum map. So once we had that gap analysis, we knew really where our gaps were. It was time to build that curriculum. Working closely with Dr. Shanahan's office, Dr. Otto's office, it was really a collaboration amongst all of our health ed teachers, our PPS staff, our curriculum office to build this curriculum. We spent quite a bit of time from starting last spring through the summer, through the fall for superintendent conference days to build the curriculum for health, mental health ed curriculum. Some of the topics that that are included in that are our Health Smart curriculum. That is a digital resource, an online resource for health education. It meets all of the national standards for health education, which meets all of the New York State health standards for health education. DASA, anti-bullying, Aaron's Law, Lifelines lessons, mental health standards, all of our health standards for New York State, but also at the national level as well. Mental health, just some resources that we utilize within that curriculum, our Choose Laws and Second Step, which are Tier 1 interventions as part of NTSS. And then we finalize those curriculum maps on superintendent conference days. So we're in good shape. Just to give you an idea at the elementary level what some of those lesson topics are. Elementary age kids will receive at minimum 11 lessons throughout the course of the school year. And you can see here on the screen lessons such as feelings and empathy, self-care, nutrition, forgiveness, DASA, relationships, Aaron's Law, etc. You can see it's kind of a interwoven of health education, but mental health education standards. Also at the 5th grade level, there will be an additional couple of lessons relative to our Lifelines curriculum and safety, and also beginning entry into human growth and development. Just to give you an idea, across the continuum K through 5, I chose feelings and empathy. That was one of the first units that our teachers taught here at the elementary level in health education. And as you can see, it progresses as we go from kindergarten to 5th grade. So for example, feelings and empathy for lesson 1, kindergarten, positive and negative feelings. What are they, right? How do we identify what positive feelings are, what negative feelings are? All the way to 5th grade, relating those experiences to feelings and identifying healthy ways to express your feelings. So as we're continuing to work on social emotional health and wellness and quality of life, we can see that continuum continue to grow all the way up through the 9th grade. We have K-9 health education. Okay, at the middle school level, this is the tentative curriculum guide that we have by month. So starting in September, who are trusted adults? Who can you trust within your building? Who can you trust within your community? Focus on your own personal health and wellness. Building that foundation for your own personal health and wellness. How do I make healthy choices? What are the skills that I need to be able to make those choices? And then other things like dealing with anxiety and bullying, internet safety. And the beauty really about health education is that it has its ebbs and flows depending on what's going on in our current society. So, talking about cigarette smoking may not be as relevant now as maybe vaping is, and that's kind of where the ebbs and flows go with health education in the curriculum. Physical education. At our meeting, the last time I presented, I talked to you a little bit about how the curriculum was being updated from the state level, New York State Learning Standards for physical education, and where we were at currently on that. We are ahead of the game, so currently we are in phase 2, which is build capacity, guidance for local programs and curriculum development. We have already started and pretty much completed that curriculum development as we looked at our previous curriculum and how that aligns to the new state learning standards for physical education. And then to take it one step further, how do we assess students on those learning standards? What activities, what lessons would we like to incorporate in the future to make sure that we're hitting all those standards properly, but we're also giving relevant physical education, focusing on the whole child, wellness initiatives, fitness, etc., to bring those into our curriculum K through 12 for physical education. We did this through K-12 professional development, bringing the entire K-12 phys ed teachers together to work on that curriculum development, those standards alignments, evaluating where we are currently at. I will tell you that our K-12 phys ed department, while they love their games of traditional sports of basketball and badminton and hockey, etc., we also know that kids want more and kids deserve more. They want wellness activities, they want fitness days, they want cooperative games, etc. So we're really doing a good job of working on making sure that we're relevant for all kids and that kids can find ways or find interest in to be physically active during their years here at Amherst, but beyond as well. The mindset has shifted to physical literacy, and again, that whole concept of whole child development, having kids so that they understand how to be physically active, what it means to be physically active, and finding opportunities to be physically active throughout their entire lifetime. We are currently still in the works of creating a shared vision for health and physical education, a shared vision based on the learning standards that have been updated and where we currently are and where we want to go. So that's still some ongoing work with our health and phys ed department. And then what resources we need, talking a little bit about facility upgrades, which you'll see here in just a second. All right, so fitness centers. We have updated our fitness centers for physical education use, for athletics use, for staff use, etc. This is just a couple of images from the completed job at the high school. You can see we've got a real nice tiger logo with the A, a lot of branding going on here. Real big piece of what I'm all about is branding, marketing, highlighting our student athletes, giving them a place that they can feel proud to be in. We've got the orange turf, spin bikes, all new cardio equipment. It's top notch. It comes from G&G Fitness, which is local here in Williamsville. We've got a sound system, the whole 9 yards. The kids are really enjoying the space. We're hoping to open up more and more to our staff as well, again, to focus on that whole child, that whole person initiative and healthy living. Okay.
Just along those lines, I wanted to highlight that our fitness centers at the middle and high school in particular were originally outfitted with a grant that was known as a popular grant years ago, known as the PEP grant. It was an acronym for something, but I know Amherst had received that PEP grant under the work of Mrs. Higgins, our Smallwood Drive Elementary phys ed teacher, and it was around 2004 or 2005 that we were able to get that grant to create the fitness centers. And over time, we've done our best to try to keep that equipment up to date and, keep it in operation. And we found that it was just a battle we couldn't keep up with. So when we were able to obtain the federal stimulus dollars through ARPA and CRISA, again, I'm full of acronyms tonight, one of the priorities that emerged was physical wellness as well as mental wellness, which Mr. Wheaton has highlighted very well here. And the fitness center, if you were to walk into it now, it used to be dingy. Every other treadmill would work if you were lucky. Some of the equipment was just old and it wasn't fluid when you were trying to use it. And so we've been able to upgrade that equipment and make it a place that is not only good for teaching during the day, but gets a lot of use after school, as well as by our staff and recreationally, kids are in there even after school hours as well. So that's been a great upgrade.
It's been phenomenal. The kids, the teachers love it. We're hoping to continue to build that culture of strength and conditioning and overall fitness and wellness. And this is just a piece of the puzzle to have that resource. It's really quite outstanding, and the mood has changed when you walk into that fitness center. So thank you again. The middle school is still in the works a little bit. We have all of the equipment in. We've got some fine tuning to do, some graphics and some paint, but we'll get there and hopefully unveil the middle school one very soon as well. But that is a couple pictures, images of the high school. All right, so I'm going to shift gears a little bit to athletics. I know this was primarily a phys ed health update, but I got to throw in a little bit of athletics flair to it as well. So girls flag football is something that is on the horizon. It came on, there's been talk about it recently, but it kind of picked up steam quite a bit, really just in the last month or so. So it's really come on pretty heavily here. And as you can see by the icons behind me, or the logos behind me, it is a collaboration between Section 6, our area here, NISFA, New York State Public High School Athletics, the Buffalo Bills, Nike, the New York Giants, and the Jets to bring flag football to the state of New York, with the hopes that there will be eventually, this is the varsity level, with the hopes to be eventually a state championship with all of these organizations coming together to be able to provide that. So just some of the nuts and bolts of the program. The season start date is on April 4th, which is a little bit behind the spring sports start season. The start season for spring sports is March 14th. so there's a little bit of a delay to get through that. And that was done purposely for students that maybe decided that they didn't want to play a spring sport, or they went out for a spring sport and didn't make the team. There's options to participate in flag football. But I'll show you some survey results here of why we felt, and I felt, that it was a good idea to move forward with flag football. A 6 to 8 game season. It will be a regulation-sized field. Our plan is to use the turf stadium for flag football. A 15 to 20 athlete team roster. 12 teams in the pilot year. The teams, if you haven't seen them in the news, are Sweet Home, Niagara Falls, Depew, West Seneca West, West Seneca East, Frontier, Orchard Park, Hamburg, Iroquois, Buffalo Academy Charter School, and North Tonawanda and Amherst. We will be receiving a $3,000 grant from the Buffalo Bills to offset any expenses that we have in the pilot year. In addition, the Amherst Tigers Booster Club has offered to throw in an additional $1,000, which is similar, if you recall, to Unified Sports when we started a new program. We had grants like that and donations to help offset. Nike will be providing uniforms as a promotion, up to 20 uniforms. I actually have a call tomorrow with Todd Nelson, who's the Assistant Director for New York State Public High School Athletics, to talk about that uniform order and what they may look like. And then there is hopes for a possible regional and state tournament in future years. I know the Buffalo Bills would love to have the state tournament at Highmark, but we will see how that plays out with the Jets and the Giants in the mix as well. Okay, so I did put a survey out to our female students, grades 9 through 12, back on October, when there was really just some rumblings of this discussion. I wanted to see, one, is there interest, right? Because if there's no interest, why would we move forward with it? But two, I also wanted to see, and some of the conversation that my colleagues had in other districts were, they were worried that if they started yet another program, what's that going to do to lacrosse? What's that going to do to softball, track and field, etc.? So here are the results of the survey, again, back from October. 47 students responded that they would be interested in participating in girls flag football at the varsity level this coming spring. And of those 47, the question that I posed was, do you currently play a spring season sport? If so, which one? And of those, 42% do not currently play a spring sport, so almost half. So if you're looking at a roster size of 15 to 20, we know right there, if those kids come out and truly are interested, we have plenty of student athletes that are interested in playing that don't necessarily overlap with another spring sport that they're currently playing. With that said though, Section 6 does allow dual sport, which not all sections do, but Section 6 does. So if we do have a child that wants to participate in flag football that also runs track and field, that is an option, and that's something that we would explore with myself, the two coaches, and the family to make sure that it's the best option for that child. Because it might not be, but it might be a viable option, as we've had in the past other student athletes dual sporting depending on the circumstances and the sports that are involved. That is my spiel about girls flag football. My hope is for your support to continue to move forward in this in an emerging sport. I think it's an exciting piece. We could be one of 12, the originators of the original group of girls flag football. I think it's going to pick up steam from here, and it's going to take its own shape, and I think eventually we will get to that point where we will have a state championship and hopefully adding modified and JV down the road. But this is the start, and I think it's a really exciting time for Amherst and the Western New York community.
Mr. Reed, what kind of equipment do they wear for girls flag football?
So they use sonic belts, so the belts that make that pop noise when they come off, those are provided by Nike. They use the junior size football, traditional leather football, but junior size. They're required to have a mouth guard, and that's it.
Should we be able to coach at that thing?
Well, once I am given the A-OK to move forward, we will go and recruit a coach. We've had a few behind the scenes people say that they're very intrigued by that position.
Is it professionally reffed and the refs in two flag football?
Yep. So Section 6 is working with the Football Referees Association of Section 6 right now to have that solidified, and it'll be 3 officials on the field. Their hope is that they're the same football officials as the boys have in the fall.
Yeah, so with it being grant funded in year one, we wanted to make sure the board had the opportunity to hear the presentation and ask any questions. And I think Mr. Wheaton referenced, getting the go-ahead. So, he's planning starting tomorrow to move forward with coaching selection and sign-ups and, some of the more formal stages of the planning. There's certainly been a lot behind the scenes. And then we'll maintain communication throughout the spring budget development season to see how the program's rolling out and whether or not we're able to continue it through budget development or if we need to look for alternative means. But I think it's certainly nice to be in the pilot stage of something so positive like this. When you have a partner like the NFL, I think it's certainly something that's going to be sustainable moving forward. For those of you that watched any of the Pro Bowl stuff over last weekend, one of the features during the Pro Bowl weekend was a girls' flag football championship game that they aired on television. So it's certainly starting to become more and more popular and more mainstream. And I'm thankful for Jeff's leadership to bring it to our district as one of the pioneers in Western New York. Does anyone have any questions for Jeff about anything that he presented?
So will all you be a spring sport?
Yeah, that's the intention. That it's always going to be a strength sport with the hope of a traditional length of the season. In the pilot year, it's a shorter season. It's a 6 to 8 game, and their hope is to expand that to a traditional spring season of 14, 16 games.
How many people will be on the field?
7 on 7. 7 on 7. Yep. One question I have is they do state that you can use a regulation size field. Or 7 on 7, is that too wide? There are some variations, so those are some of the nitty-gritty that we have to sort out as a section and as a league.
What about the pits?
What's that?
Do they fit?
They do not fit field goals. I have to look through the rules to that. I know they're going to have a coaches and ADs meeting in the month of April. As well as a meet and greet at the Advocacy Fieldhouse at Field Stadium to kind of go through all of the final details of it. But I wish I had the rules.
Is everyone okay with moving forward with that? You have our full support.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I think, one of the things I just want to highlight is in this update alone, you get a little bit of a microcosm of Jeff's job. He's provided us with curriculum development update, physical education, health curriculum update, physical education curriculum update, facilities update, athletics update. I think the only thing he didn't touch upon is his leadership with our nurses, which, as you know, in the year we are currently experiencing is a very big lift, and I'm thankful for his leadership because it's evident that every single area you are leading is not only doing very well, but excelling. So congratulations on a job well done, and thank you for your leadership.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mr. Wheaton.
We also have an update on our revenue budget from Mrs. Mazinski. The interesting thing that we are experiencing currently with budget development, it hasn't happened in my tenure as either superintendent or assistant superintendent, is here we are February 8th, and the thing that is most clear to us right now is probably our revenue picture, where in past years we're waiting for the April 1st deadline for the budget to pass to know what our revenue picture is going to look like. So we made some modifications to how we normally present the budget, and we're focusing tonight solely on the revenue side of the equation. We have made no changes from the December budget presentation on the expenditure side, because that's still a work in progress with Mrs. Bazinski and the administrative cabinet and myself. But we, for the first time that I can recall in my 17 years as a public school administrator, actually have some good information out of Albany as a result of the executive budget proposal that allows us to be a little bit more targeted in how we're planning for this year's budget.
Superintendent Pinello is stealing my thunder.
All of it.
So yes, the items in blue will be what we're reviewing tonight. Because the changes are so significant this year with our state aid, we really wanted to focus on that tonight. We'll take a very in-depth look at expenditures on March 15th, when we have our next budget presentation. But for tonight, we're going to dive into state aid, take a look at our tax cap, and talk through not only what we're facing in 22-23, but also the next 2 years and how we are planning for those changes. So our property tax levy, or tax cap this year, is close to zero. It's 0.06 is our allowable levy, which is an increase of about $22,000. So in normal years, that would be really, really bad news because, you know, the tax cap's at 2%, you want it to be close to that. If there's ever a good time for your tax cap to be close to zero, it's when you're getting $2.8 million in foundation aid, and that is this year. So in our calculations, we have our growth factor, which is 0.0014% growth in the town, which is almost nothing. CPI is 2%, which is the maximum it can be. And it also includes our capital exclusion of just under $1 million. So our capital exclusion are expenses that our voters have already authorized over the years in capital projects. And that's the difference between the payments that we need to make on that debt and the state aid that we're expecting to receive the next year. So that's why we're able to add that in. So with a 0.06 compliant tax cap, we will submit that to the State Comptroller's office by March 1st. But we do have time and the ability to amend that prior to us adopting our budget. So after we review our expenditures in March, at that time, we will, ask the board where you want to go with the tax cap. You want to stay at compliance at 0.06, less, more, that's when we'll have that discussion, and then we'll be able to amend our tax cap submission if needed based on that decision. All of our other revenues for miscellaneous revenues and transfers, we left the same as what it was in December for our rollover budget. And state aid. So this slide is new this year. We wanted to take a little bit closer look at state aid and share with you the differences between what we're projecting in state aid and what our state aid runs show. So for foundation aid, we do have an increase of $2.8 million. So in December, we had projected 2.4. We were being conservative because we didn't know exactly what those numbers were going to come in at. It's a total of $12.2 million, and we did add that into our revenue budget. Our BOCES aid, the state aid run is $1.6 million, but our budget projection includes $1.7 million, and the increase of just over $100,000 is due to a potential IPA that we're planning to do this year. So if you remember, we've talked at length about having an IPA for technology updates annually. We receive an increase in BOCES aid the following year, which helps keep that cost neutral. So our state aid runs don't know about that yet, which is why it wouldn't have captured that expenditure. But we know that we're planning to do it, so that's why I included the additional funds in our revenue budget. Our high cost and excess cost aid is based on current year expenditures, and it is projected to go down for next year based in comparison to what we included in the December budget. So in December, we just rolled everything up flat. So we do have about a $100,000 decrease over what our December budget showed. Transportation aid is increasing almost to $2 million, but our December presentation included about 2.4. And again, we had rolled it up from what our normal pre-pandemic aid would look like, but we're not quite back there yet, so it's coming in at about $2 million. That might change when we receive the runs in April, and if it does, we'll adjust accordingly. But the big change that I wanted to point out to you is on our building aid. Building aid is based on our current capital projects that have already passed. The increase of $1.5 million that we're including in our budget, that's above what our state aid runs show, is due to our current project, which we're just finishing. We submitted our final cost reports December 31st, so those figures are not included in the state aid runs yet. So the state aid runs show 3.3 million. We are anticipating 4.8 million. We have worked with Rick Yancey to make sure that those figures are accurate and predictable, and he agrees that those are good numbers to use. So overall, we're anticipating a $3.4 million increase in state aid, or approximately 18%. Does anybody have any questions on our state aid? So that is strictly for the 22-23 school year. So this shows what we're looking at for 22-23 as well as the next 2 years. So the items in blue have changed from our December presentation. At the top, you see our tax cap calculation at 0.06, which is just under $39 million for our tax cap levy. And then moving forward into 23-24 and 24-25, we are assuming 2% on our property tax levy, and then the capital exclusion is actually calculated based on our projected building aid and our projected debt expenses, which is why that changes slightly from year to year. So while this year is close to 0, we are projecting a 1.1% tax levy next year or the year after, and just over 2% the subsequent year. On state aid, we wanted to make sure that we were being as conservative as possible. So in 22-23, we do show the total state aid of $22.2 million, but in year 2 and year 3, we did not assume an additional $2.8 million in foundation aid. So we've all heard the conversations, foundation aid will be funded in 2 years. That'll be wonderful, and I sincerely hope that that happens. But we can't assume it's going to happen and plan expenditures as if it will. So we are trying to be conservative. We assumed that state aid will stay flat with the exception of an increase to transportation aid. During our December presentation, we talked about a placeholder we put in our budget of about $800,000 in transportation aid or in transportation expenditure increase, because we're exploring the possibility of adding buses to our fleet, looking at our start and end times for our buildings. While that decision has not been made yet, it's still in the exploratory process. We do have that placeholder in our expenditure budget, so we have a subsequent placeholder for revenue in the next year for transportation aid of $560,000, which is about our aid return. If for some reason we decided we weren't moving forward and we weren't going to spend that $800,000 in transportation aid, we would also need to take out the revenue the following year because it's expense driven and then we wouldn't be receiving it. So that's just kind of how the two are flowing together. The building aid is changing from year 2 to 3. Again, it's based on our projections from Nancy, with the state aid that we are anticipating receiving based on our projects. This picture will change dramatically if in 23-24 we actually do receive another $2.8 million in foundation aid. But we're not going to know that for another year. So we wanted to make sure that we were being responsible to our taxpayers, that we were being responsible to our staffing and our programming, and that we were making sure that we're not over-projecting revenues and then don't have the ability to support our expenditures in the future. Other revenues are just minor changes based on rounding so that we get to a nice even number of $68,313,000 for our revenue budget. It's just over 6% increase. Any questions? We did not make any changes on our expenditure assumptions. As Superintendent Pinella said, we're doing that work now. We will have that information for you in detail during the March 15th board meeting. Our expenditure projections are just over $69 million, $4.7 million increase in spending. But again, that was our rollover budget. It was with very little information. 5% increase here, 2% increase there, and now we're at the point where we're starting to receive some more precise projections. So overall, we do show a gap of $758,000 for next year. And as you can see in years 2 and 3, that gap increases. But again, we did not increase any state aid in those years other than potentially the transportation aid in year 2. And we didn't make any changes to our expenditure budget based on any updates that we've received over the last month or that we will receive the rest of this month. So we'll look at that in March. And at that time, it's our intention and our goal and our expectation that we'll be able to present to you a balanced budget at that time.
Yeah, I think it's important to note, we should be able to have a balanced budget with little to no use of fund balance and reserves and almost 0% tax levy for our taxpayers. So it's amazing to think how many years we survived with being underfunded so much, and now that the legislators are actually taking action to fully fund the formula, and not only fully fund it, but look at it so that the money just doesn't keep going into the formula and going to people that have all the aid and that were fully funded. And now us districts like us that were behind and only around 59% funded are getting these big bumps to bring us up to where some districts have been, over the last 5 to 7 years. So certainly we're taking a conservative approach, and we understand that we need to continue to do so, but to be able to present a balanced budget with little use of fund balance and reserves, as well as almost no impact on our taxpayers, is a different world than what we've experienced over the past several years. So it's a good time for us relative to state aid and how that the legislators have worked on our behalf.
So our tax cap is close to 0. We have an increase in revenue of about $4 million. Our expenditures are staying the same. And we do show a gap right now, but again, we didn't adjust any of our expenditures as updated information is coming in. The Superintendent Now mentioned, we do not have any fund balance or reserves that are appropriated to this budget that aren't matched by an equal expenditure line. So $1 million in fund balance is offset by the contingency line. We have an $80,000 use of reserves that's offset equally by an expenditure line for those reserves. So that's a little different than what we've had in the past, which is a great place to be. Questions?
So the ERS and TRS, I know it says projected, but are those actually yet?
The TRS came in at 10.29% and our expenditures is 10.5%, so we'll see a reduction there.
ERS?
ERS I think is staying the same.
Thank you. Yeah, once again, this is something we've never experienced. For those of you who've been on the board or pay close attention to how New York State's budget's developed, you know that in the past, over the past 12 years or so, there's a lot of propaganda and threats that are made with the executive budget, threats of cuts, threats of changing formulas, and then there's, the 3 men in a room negotiations that take place, and all of a sudden April 1st the budget is announced. And then we scramble to finalize our budget now that the revenue picture is clear. So what the current governor has done is, I think, provided a budget that I believe will be supported by the Assembly and the Senate, which gives us the ability to plan effectively. So again, we made the mid-year change or adjustment to only focus on revenue now, and then we'll adjust our expenditure side of the budget for March 15th, and I think you'll see things balance out quite nicely. Thank you.
The other mention you did, Tim's, was it's an election year and the government can plan.
Yeah. That's why in our state aid projections, we kept them flat from this next year to the following year. Hopefully there's enough support, I'm hearing there's enough support in the Assembly and the Senate to continue the full funding of foundation aid, so that, but that is a consideration, that it's an election year.
All right. With that, we will need a motion for new business items.
Make a motion for new business items E1, A through K, 2, A through E, 3, A through H.
We have a second?
I'll second.
Mrs. Goldman. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving new business items E1, A through K, 2A through E, and 3A through H, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Mrs. Custodi, do we have any follow-up action items?
I do not.
Then we will need a motion to convene to executive session.
I'll make a motion to convene to executive session for discussions regarding employment of particular persons and assumed disciplinary.
Do we have a second? Mr. Vivolo? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Thank you, everybody, for coming.